but the desire is to start on time, okay? I appreciate that. A quorum is present. The committee meets today pursuant to notice. Thank you, everyone, for attending the Education and Workforce Committee and its organizing meeting. Ranking Member Scott, who I call a friend, I can do that, can't I? Yeah. I appreciate that, because I consider him a good friend. And all of our returning members, as well as new members on this committee, I'm excited to work with all of you. I appreciate the fact that the majority of you wanted to be on this committee. It is, in my mind, and I believe Representative Scott's mind, an A committee, especially in the time and age in which we live right now, where education and workforce come together in such a needy way. We have challenges in our world today in keeping ahead of the game unlike any other time in history. So this is a time to work together, and I'm excited to work with all of you. I'll make an opening statement followed by the ranking member, and without objection, I ask that any other members wishing to make an opening statement submit them for the record. I recognize myself now for the opening statement. Ranking Member Scott and I look forward to continuing this committee's legacy of being able to disagree without being disagreeable. And at that point, I guess what I want to make clear is that I want firm, full-throated debate to go on this committee whenever it's necessary. And I believe that on both sides of the aisle, we have a passion about issues as well as some issues that we agree totally on. But those passionate issues where we have some disagreement, we ought to have a full-throated debate. There ought to be a creative tension in all of our minds and hearts about what we do because it means something for the future of this country. But Representative Scott and I have talked about this already, that there have been times where we have devolved for a little bit of time into personality and political name-calling or posturing, and that's happened on both sides of the aisle. And I, to my best ability, am going to try to ascertain when we have crossed that line, and if we hear the gavel go down, is for that purpose, to say, hey, let's get back to the issue at hand. Because while we may agree or disagree, the creative tension that can produce the best result possible is important for us to have. So we will try to keep that decorum that comes in place at points in time. Out of the gate, the committee will work, I believe, to advance the administration's agenda. The people spoke at this last election. The outcome is as it is, and the agenda will be aggressive, and this committee will be involved in it. I think you all understand that. On the education front, that means pursuing policies to address out-of-control college costs, expanding education freedom and school choice opportunities, calling out what has been defined as woke higher education institutions, especially those that allow anti-Semitism to run rampant, and examining the crisis in our K-12 education system that for too long put special interest on labor union leadership over the outcome of students, teachers, and the rights of parents. In the workforce space, the Biden-Harris administration, I believe, has put American entrepreneurs at times on the chopping block, which threatened economic opportunities for hardworking Americans. Instead of policies that benefit trial lawyers and labor union leadership special interests, we will pursue legislation that unleashes ingenuity and entrepreneurial spirit of the American workforce. In order to do that, we must bolster policies that support multiple pathways to success. Bottom line, we want students, workers, job creators, all to have the skills they need to be competitive in the 21st century. That's a high calling of this committee. More than 150 million Americans have employer-sponsored health insurance, or ESI, which falls squarely under this committee's jurisdiction. ESI is at the forefront of creating innovative and market-based solutions that expand affordable health coverage for American families. The committee will continue to fight for proven solutions to drive down health care costs, like the Association Health Plans Act, as well as legislation that improves billing and coverage transparency for employers, like the policies that were incorporated into the Lower Costs, More Transparency Act. I look forward to the next 2 years together, and to everyone on this committee. While there are many challenges ahead of us, there are just as many opportunities. I look forward to leveraging the expertise of this committee's members so we can deliver for the American people. Before turning things over to Ranking Member Scott, I'd like to introduce the new Republican members. I hope they're all here by now, and I think they are. Representative Bob Onder of Missouri. Bob, good to have you. And I know you're passionate about this committee because you told me so. Representative Ryan McKenzie of Pennsylvania. Ryan, good to have you, especially in the labor space with your experience. Representative Michael Baumgartner of Washington State. I don't see him here. It's a longer distance from Washington State to get here. We'll see him soon. And then Representative Mark Harris of North Carolina. Mark, it's good to see you here as well. And it's good to have another pastor on the team, huh? And then Representative Mark Messmer of Indiana. Mark, good to have you with your experience coming from your legislative experience as well. We welcome you to the Education and Workforce Committee. Thank you. With that, I yield to the ranking member for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations on being selected as the committee's leader for the next 2 years. And we'd also like to congratulate the outgoing chair, Dr. Fox, on her selection as chair of the Rules Committee. It is a pleasure to welcome members on both sides of the aisle to the committee. I'm particularly excited to see many new faces. On our side, I'd like to acknowledge our new members. From Texas, a former member of the Austin City Council, Greg Kassar. From Pennsylvania, a lawyer, former state legislator, Summer Lee. And from New York, state legislator, longtime teacher, John Mannion. As we formally begin our work for the 119th Congress, I'd like to acknowledge the significant progress we made on behalf of students, workers, and families under the Biden-Harris administration. The last 4 years, we have added 16.6 million jobs to the economy, setting the record for any president in a 4-year term, and in fact, more than any Republican president, whether they served 4 or 8 years. The Biden-Harris administration also reduced unemployment to historic lows, saved over 1 million workers' pensions, delivered historic funding for education, improved child nutrition, and brought the number of uninsured Americans down to the lowest level ever. In the 119th Congress, I remain committed to working with every member of this committee as we achieve our shared goal of ensuring that everyone across the nation has access to quality education, good-paying jobs, and affordable health care. And we may not always agree on the path of achieving these goals, but we can all agree to work in good faith and use research and evidence to develop policies that will improve the lives of the people we serve. In particular, I'm eager to pick up where we left off at the end of last Congress and finally pass a reauthorization of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. Our bipartisan, bicameral proposal will help train workers for good-paying jobs and connect employers with highly qualified candidates. It's good for workers, good for employers, and good for the economy. So I hope we can start with that bipartisan initiative. But I want to be clear, the committee Democrats will not compromise our values, nor are we interested in rubber stamping the Trump administration's agenda. If the administration is determined to enact Project 2025, there will be strong opposition from committee Democrats. This committee holds the authority and responsibility to tackle many of the issues confronting our communities today. First, we're responsible for ensuring that all students have access to high-quality public education that provides them for a rewarding career. We're also responsible for building on our historic economic progress and empowering workers so that the economy can continue growing from the middle out and from the bottom up. And importantly, we're responsible for protecting and expanding access to affordable health care. Regardless of which political party is in charge, Committee Democrats' mission is unchanged. We'll work to build an economy where everyone can succeed. Finally, Mr. Chairman, I join you in your goal of conducting the committee proceedings in a dignified manner that we can all be proud of. I look forward to that, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Well, I thank my friend and appreciate your opening statement. I think there's a lot of creative tension opportunities there to refine us all. And ultimately, I think there are also some unique points where we'll agree on and can come together. And I commit myself and our team to do our best to work towards solutions. I'd now like to introduce Burgess Owens from Utah as Vice Chair of the full committee. Having a guy that wears a Super Bowl ring makes me feel a lot more comfortable with him as my Vice Chair, plus his passion for this committee. It's my pleasure to introduce the new chairs of our 4 subcommittees. The Subcommittee on Early Childhood, Elementary, and Secondary Education will be chaired by Representative Kevin Kiley from the 3rd District of California. It's a distance to come from California, too, but he'll be here doing his job. Representative Kevin Kiley will be the chair, but Representative Mary Miller, who's here from the 5th District of Illinois, will serve as vice chair of the subcommittee. The Subcommittee on Higher Education and Workforce will be chaired by Representative Burgess Owens from the 4th District of Utah, and Representative Baumgardner will serve as the subcommittee vice chair. The Subcommittee on Health, Employment, Labor, and Pensions will be chaired by Representative Rick Allen, who comes back to take over that subcommittee from times before, and Representative Onder will serve as the vice chair of this subcommittee. And the Subcommittee on Workforce Protection will be chaired by Representative McKenzie. Representative Mesmer will serve as the subcommittee's vice chair. Thank you for accepting these challenges. And now I yield to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Scott, to introduce the subcommittee's ranking members of his committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to introduce the gentlelady from Oregon, Ms. Bonamici, who will be the ranking member of the Early Childhood, Elementary, and Secondary Education Subcommittee. Gentlelady from North Carolina, Dr. Adams, ranking member of the Higher Education and Workforce Development Subcommittee. Gentleman from California, Mr. Desaunier, the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Health, Education, and Labor and Pensions. And the gentlelady from Minnesota, Ms. Omar, the ranking member of the Workforce Protection Subcommittee. And the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Kassar, who was elected by the Democratic members to serve as vice ranking member of the committee. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. I welcome back all the members on both sides of the aisle. We're glad to see everyone and look forward to the work the committee will do together. Without objection, the subcommittee assignments as set forth in the rosters made available to each of you in advance of the meeting will be inserted in the record and shall be approved. I ask the committee to give me a little deference here. As we begin this committee with great importance, as I said, education and workforce, that's America. That's what encourages people even to come to come to America, to stay, to work, to invest their lives, their families in America. And I think most of you know me to be a Christian, conservative, and Republican in that order. I hope that offends no one. But being a person of faith, I would like to ask for deference to begin this day alone, as we do every day in the House of Representatives, with a prayer. And today it's a prayer of dedication that comes from my heart. For each of you as friends and as colleagues, on both sides of the aisle, whether we agree or disagree, vociferously at times, but nonetheless, we are Americans. We love this country. So if you'd allow me this deference in the Judeo-Christian tradition to offer a prayer, I'd like to do that now. Father God, I come to you today in the presence of friends, of colleagues, of people who represent districts, policies, agendas, all of the above. We come from different faiths as well. But God, I pray that you will somehow unite us together for a special purpose this year, Democrats and Republicans, from rural, from suburban, from urban districts, from east to west, and everything in between. I pray that our passion will overflow, but our consideration, our charity, and may I say even our love for each other as colleagues bound in a struggle together for freedom and opportunity, that will do good work this year. I pray that you will bless us with the ability to communicate, and even more so, the willingness and the blessing to listen and to undertake things for the better of this country and for ultimately a well done. It's in the name of my Savior I pray. Amen. Thank you. Thank you for letting me do that. The committee will now proceed to consideration of the rules for amendment. The committee print of the committee rules was made available to each of you, and without objection, the committee print will be considered as read and open for amendment at any point. And any amendment offered shall be considered as read. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes to explain the rules. We're making some structural reforms to the committee procedures while also keeping some practices that are working well. Most of them are, in fact. For example, we're keeping the committee's name minus the. Hey, I'm efficient, okay? Which reflects the fact that this committee celebrates the dignity of work. The committee's name also recognizes the full spectrum upon which the American workforce is built: independent contracting, blue-collar work, franchise ownership, union membership, non-union, just to name a few. As for changes, the committee will be instituting electronic voting. We're in the process of getting that. So hang tight, it's coming. And I think that'll work with your already busy schedules in other committees, because you've been brought onto other committees because of your character and your ability as well. So that's something we will be working on.
This is quite bipartisan. Look at Congressman Norcross, how happy he is.
He's always happy. That's a Harley rider for you. Yeah. I look forward to a more effective and efficient process that will help save our members time, but makes us more productive. I don't waste anything if I can help it, and that includes time. Waste not, want not. I will now recognize Mr. Scott for his remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The rules package we have here is a straightforward document. It recognizes the majority's prerogatives in a way that, frankly, is no less fair to the minority than the packages that I brought forth in the 116th and 117th Congresses. So while we disagree on the number of subcommittees we should have and what the name should be, these disagreements will not stop us from having an open debate on the issues within the jurisdiction of this committee. That said, I think there is one rule that we should address that affects our ability to debate openly in the committee. Under the rules of the House for the 118th Congress and regulations thereto, the majority established a process that made it highly unlikely that we could have a witness testify remotely before the committee. These regulations remain unchanged for this Congress, but I understand the motivation that the Republican majority had in attempting to end all remaining vestiges of how we proceeded when we were in the majority, but all of the different steps we took to limit the transmission of COVID, like allowing witnesses to testify remotely, seemed like one of the few that had obvious benefits above and beyond the pandemic prevention. Moreover, many committees, including this one, utilize technology to allow for remote testimony even prior to COVID, and we were able to negotiate its use in a way that was beneficial to both the witnesses and the committee. However, by setting an incredibly high standard to justify remote testimony and then creating an elaborate process to approve its use, the 118th House rules made it virtually impossible to utilize remote witnesses. I'm dismayed to see that the 119th House rules have maintained this barrier. The rules effectively guarantee that remote testimony will be used sparingly, if at all. This change will continue to have profound impact on the fundamental right of the minority to call its witnesses. In the 116th and 117th Congress, the ability to allow witnesses to participate without having to uproot their lives proved beneficial, as we heard from a diverse set of witnesses across the country. It isn't hard to imagine that the voices we silenced by not allowing remote testimony included teachers who may not be able to leave a classroom for multiple days to include travel to and from Washington, but could easily testify online for a few hours to provide vital insight to an education hearing. A college student balancing raising a family and going to school may be unable to secure funds to buy a last-minute plane ticket to give us an accurate real-world depiction of the student loan crisis. A disabled worker might find it difficult to navigate travel necessary to make it here to Congress, which itself has not always proven hospitable to disabled individuals. But Zoom makes that those access issues irrelevant. Or a witness may test positive for COVID the day of the hearing, a disease that is still responsible for over 1.5% of all deaths in the United States each week. The COVID positive witness may be healthy enough to testify, but responsible enough not to fly or come to the committee room, where we'd all be at high risk, even if they are local. Will the process be flexible enough to allow them to still testify on short notice? It does not seem to be so. So simply put, a person with the most expertise and willingness to testify before us may be someone prohibited for any number of reasons for doing so, and allowing for remote testimony is just one way to ensure to get the best information from the best witnesses. It was one of the stated goals of the majority to reopen the People's House in the 118th Congress and to hear from Americans outside of Washington, D.C., and I don't know a better way to do that than to allow for committees to hear testimony from people who, for whatever reason, cannot make it to Washington. We should not erect unnecessary barriers to their participation, particularly since I know that working with the chairman, we could negotiate a policy around remote testimony that would not only improve, that would only improve our proceedings. So while changing the House rules is not up for debate in this committee, I hope that the chair will work with me when we request a remote witness, because that's the best witness for the hearing to affirmatively determine the necessary remote participation for that witness, to affirmatively seek the majority leader's written approval for that witness, and to permit the witness's remote participation following the majority leader's approval. However, I would urge you, Mr. Chairman, and all of my majority colleagues to take this issue back to your conference and remember the promises made to open this House to all, and to recognize that we could do more in a sensible way to open the House by easing regulations on remote testimony. Lastly, I want to emphasize that this issue, an issue that this committee has traditionally been very good about, regardless of who's in the majority, and that is giving ample notice for markups and hearings. For this committee, we've had thoughtful and productive hearings and markups, and for that we need adequate time to prepare for those events. When rules establish minimum notice requirements, the Education and Workforce Committee has been the model of comedy, working collaboratively to ensure that all members can do their job effectively by providing additional informal notice beyond that required by the rules, and I hope that practice will continue. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
I thank the ranking member, and we will commit to comedy, ITY,
Yes.
though there may be some comedy as well, and we all need that. But we will certainly, we're open to suggestions along the way. We'll consider them seriously. Also, we're committing to field hearings as well. And in some of the cases where we could get to those best witnesses, it can actually take place in the field. And so we'll do our best. Is there anyone else who seeks recognition? If no member seeks recognition to offer an amendment, then the question is now on the adoption of the committee rules. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 All opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The committee rules are adopted. The chair notes for the record a quorum is present. I ask unanimous consent that staff be authorized to make necessary technical and conforming changes to the committee rules. Without objection, so ordered. The committee will now proceed to the consideration and authorization of the oversight plan. The committee print of the oversight plan has been provided to each of you, and without objection, the committee print will be considered as read and open for amendment at any point, and any amendment offered shall be considered as read. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes to explain the oversight plan. As we first saw in the Trump administration, career bureaucrats have sought to undermine the goals of the president and his cabinet secretaries. We know of cases where bureaucrats have leaked sensitive information or are working with plaintiffs' attorneys to skew court cases against employers. The committee's oversight work recently brought to light how the Employee Benefit Security Administration, EBSA, is abusing its authority to secretly share information with class action law firms. This is a blatant abuse of the law, and our committee will hold EBSA accountable. Other federal agencies should take notice. Where we can provide effective oversight over the rot within the federal bureaucracy, and when necessary, promote additional legal authority to deal with the bureaucratic abuse, we will. The President has made this a priority with the establishment of the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, and our committee will work alongside President Trump to hold bad actors within the federal government accountable, and we will do our job as well. I will now recognize Mr. Scott for his remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee Democrats will work to counterbalance our Republican colleagues' proposed oversight plan. The committee should be prioritizing building on the historic progress we've made over the last 4 years. We must also ensure that the Department of Education is doing everything it can to make college more affordable and to reduce the burden of student loans. The Biden-Harris administration fought to provide all of those eligible student loan relief and to generally making paying off loans easier and more affordable. Committee Democrats also remain committed to monitoring how the Every Student Succeeds Act is implemented and help our students get the support they need to succeed. Moreover, we must continue fighting for workers' right to join a union. The labor movement built the middle class, and today unions continue to secure higher wages, better benefits, and safer workplaces for America's workers. The deck seems to always be stacked against the workers interested in organizing, and that's why Democrats will continue working to strengthen federal laws that protect workers' right to organize. The committee Democrats will also work to maintain the separation of church and state as required by our Constitution. This means monitoring not only actions taken by the Biden-Harris administration, but by conducting rigorous review of actions of the incoming administration, which, when last in power, sought to redefine the victim of discrimination to be those who seek to discriminate under the guise of religious freedom. In short, exercising oversight means putting people over politics, not scoring political points, and committee Democrats will continue working to that end. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman, and I commit to people over politics. It's there. We agreed on it.
All right.
Does anyone else seek recognition? The question is now on the adoption of the oversight plan. All in favor signify by saying aye. 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 All opposed by saying no?
No.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The oversight plan is adopted. The chair notes for the record a quorum is present without objection. I ask unanimous consent that the staff be authorized to make necessary and technical and conforming changes to the authorization and oversight plan. The last thing I will say is I point above me here. I've had the privilege of serving under George Miller as a chair, and boy, that was a learning experience. I've had the privilege of serving under Chair Bobby Scott. That was a wonderful experience. I've served under the chair of Buck McKeon, John Klein, and most recently, a force of nature, Virginia Fox. And so I've had the opportunity to learn from the best. I count this as a high privilege to chair this committee, this A committee, with impact that the world will experience if we do it in the right way. And so I look forward to this coming term, and let's have at it. Put up our dukes, compete according to market Queensberry rules or whatever else, but do it for the good of the people. Without further business, the committee stands adjourned.